When people picture power in Washington, they usually think of the president standing at a podium. But the framers of the Constitution had someone else in mind. They put Congress first. Article 1, the very first branch. Today we're breaking down how Congress actually works. The House, the Senate, the elections, the committees, the deals, and yes, even the filibuster. If you're a student prepping for an American government exam, a teacher looking for classroom material, or just someone who likes learning about politics, you're in the right place. Grab a notebook. This one covers a lot of ground. Setting the context. Congress was born out of frustration. The Articles of Confederation weren't working. States were fighting over money, printing worthless paper currency, and a group of angry farmers in Massachusetts had picked up guns in what became known as Shays' Rebellion. So delegates gathered in Philadelphia in 1787, and the argument almost broke the whole thing apart. Large states like Virginia wanted representation based on population. Small states like New Jersey wanted every state to get an equal vote. Neither side would budge. Then came the Connecticut Compromise, also called the Great Compromise. 2 houses. The Senate would give every state 2 seats, no matter its size. The House would hand out seats based on population. Big states got their fair share, small states kept their voice. That's bicameralism. The Senate has 100 members serving 6-year terms. The House has 435 members serving 2-year terms, a number capped by law back in 1929. Every 10 years, after the census, seats get reapportioned across the states. Then state legislatures redraw the district lines, a process called redistricting. Redistricting is where things get messy. When a party draws district maps to favor its own candidates, we call that gerrymandering. The word comes from Massachusetts Governor Elbridge Gerry, who back in 1812 signed off on a district shaped so oddly, people said it looked like a salamander. Both parties do it. Both parties know it's a problem. Main points. Now let's talk about what Congress can actually do. Its powers fall into 3 buckets. First, enumerated powers. These are spelled out in Article 1, Section 8. Congress can tax, coin money, declare war, raise armies, regulate trade between states and with other countries, set up federal courts, and write rules for immigration and naturalization. Taxing is arguably the most important one on the list. Without control of the money, none of the other powers matter much. That's why people say Congress holds the power of the purse. Second, implied powers. These come from the necessary and proper clause, which lets Congress pass laws that help it carry out its listed duties. Regulating banks, setting a minimum wage, building interstate highways. None of that is written directly into the Constitution. It all flows from implied power. Most of what Congress does day to day comes from this clause. Third, inherent powers. These aren't listed anywhere, but they exist because a country has to function. Controlling borders, defending against internal revolt. The framers didn't feel the need to spell out things any working government would already need. Now, how do people get into Congress in the first place? Elections. And elections cost money, a lot of it. Running a successful House campaign in 2020 averaged $2.4 million. A Senate campaign averaged over $27 million. Members of Congress often spend more hours raising money than doing the actual work. Campaign finance laws have tried to rein this in. The McCain-Feingold Act of 2002 limited soft money, the loosely regulated cash flowing to parties. Then, in 2010, the Supreme Court's Citizens United ruling changed things. Corporations and unions could now spend unlimited money on political speech, and super PACs were born. One thing money buys is a huge advantage for incumbents, the people already in office. Between 85 and 100% of House incumbents win re-election. Senators do almost as well. Incumbents have name recognition, paid staff, casework experience, and often safe seats drawn to favor their party. Beating an incumbent is tough. Once elected, members have to decide how they represent their voters. Political scientists talk about 3 models. The delegate model says a representative should vote exactly the way constituents want. The trustee model says representatives should use their own judgment. Most members mix the two, which we call the Politico model. They shift based on the issue. There's also descriptive representation, the idea that Congress should reflect the racial, ethnic, gender, and religious makeup of the country. The 119th Congress is the most diverse in history, but it's still around 72% male, 72% white, and 87% Christian. Roughly 1 in 4 members are women, up from almost none a few generations ago. And then there's collective representation. how well Congress as a whole reflects the country. This is where public opinion gets rough. Congressional approval usually sits below 20%, sometimes hitting single digits during shutdowns. Yet voters keep sending their own representatives back. People hate Congress. They tend to like their own member. That paradox is one big reason nothing changes. Application and deeper look. So how does Congress actually get anything done? Two things drive the work: party leadership and committees. Let's start with leadership. In the House, the top job goes to the Speaker of the House, the only House officer named in the Constitution. The Speaker sets the agenda, assigns bills to committees, and decides what reaches the floor. Below the Speaker, each party has a floor leader called the Majority Leader or Minority Leader, and then a whip, whose job is exactly what it sounds like: rounding up votes and keeping party members in line. The Senate works a little differently. The Vice President technically presides but rarely shows up. In practice, the Senate Majority Leader runs the floor, working alongside the Minority Leader. Because the Senate lets members debate almost without limit, cooperation matters more there than in the House. Now, committees. Congress divides its work into more than 200 committees and subcommittees. The most important ones are the standing committees, 20 in the House, 16 in the Senate. This is where bills live or die. Most bills never make it out. Committee chairs hold enormous power. They control the schedule, decide which bills get hearings, and can quietly kill legislation just by refusing to look at it. When a bill does move, here's the classic path. A member introduces it. It gets referred to a committee. Hearings are held. The committee marks it up, amending and voting. If it survives, the full House debates it under rules set by the Rules Committee. If it passes, it heads to the Senate for the same treatment. The Senate adds one more twist: the filibuster. A senator can hold up a bill by refusing to end debate. To break a filibuster, 60 senators have to vote for cloture. That means most major legislation needs a supermajority, not just a simple 51 votes. Conclusion and key takeaways. Modern Congress looks different from the classic model. Party leaders have taken more control away from committees. Big legislative fights now often run through the budget process, which lets Congress pass sweeping omnibus bills with a single vote. The filibuster has become less about actual all-night speeches and more about routine threats that block anything without 60 votes. Here's what to remember. Congress is bicameral by design: a Senate to slow things down, a House closer to the people. Its powers come in three types: enumerated, implied, and inherent. Elections favor incumbents heavily, thanks to money, name recognition, and safe seats. Members balance representing their voters with representing the nation, and Congress as a whole struggles to earn public trust. Real work gets done through party leaders and committees, and the filibuster still shapes what actually passes. If this helped, hit the like button, subscribe for more American government content, and drop a question in the comments. Next time, we'll take a closer look at the presidency. Thanks for watching.